from Woodsley Summercraft here. Today I am making something a little bit different, although it's pretty much the same. I'm making a bonsai pot for a small tree. If any of you don't know what bonsai or the art of bonsai is, basically it's essentially an art form from Japan where a tree is miniaturized in a pot. That's it in a nutshell, but it's a very cool art form and a hobby, and it's something that I have always been interested in and recently got back into it the last 2 to 3 years, and it is something that you need a lot of patience for, a lot of patience, and there's some amazing bonsai trees out there that people have grown and shaped, and just it's just cool to see. And something that I thought would be a good idea would be to make a bonsai pot on the lathe with a piece of wood. Obviously the inside is going to have to be treated so that it's relatively water resistant, even if it lasts for say a few years and then it has to be replaced. It's possible, but that's the way it goes. But at least for 1 or 3 seasons it'll be a decent bonsai pot. So what I've got here, in fact, is a piece of wood that I got from work several years ago. It is Douglas fir, which is a relatively soft wood, and I have turned it before once, and that was when I was really just getting started into turning. So and it turned out okay. It's relatively plain, there's nothing particularly interesting about the grain itself. But what I do like about this wood is the age of it. This came from a barrel. Yeah, this came from a barrel that was essentially about 100 years old. And if you look at the grain of the wood, I'll bring it in close for a good look. So if you can see that grain in that wood, it is extremely tight, and each ring is 1 year of growth. And I've counted them on one of these pieces of wood that I've got, and I counted about 144 years of growth. And as you can see, they're straight, which means the tree was massive. So essentially I'll be recycling this old piece of wood from a barrel. Now the barrel was from Heinz Canada in Leamington, Ontario. So I'm going to get this over to the bandsaw, make a circle with it, and we'll get it mounted to the lathe, and we'll see if we can make a bonsai pot. Okay, so this piece of wood is 10 inches by 2 3/4 inches thick, and what I actually want is a little bit of a foot, because then I'll end up notching the foot so that the water can escape, because I'm actually going to have to end up putting holes in this for drainage, and then the finish that goes on this is going to have to be water resistant. So I'm going to use resin of sorts, an epoxy resin, to coat this, almost like a bar top finish. But I might do Lichtenberg burning on this because I think that would look cool. I just don't know how this wood will take to Lichtenberg, because some woods take it better than others. So we'll see. I'm going to do a practice piece first, and then we'll go from there. First of all, I'm going to get this shaped. I'm going to put my mortise in the middle and put my foot, and then we'll shape the outside. I've got a shape in mind, so let's see how it goes. You're hiding in
everybody feel alone.
Okay, so I'm going to put some sanding sealer on this just to stiffen up these fibers, because it is a very soft wood really. It's considered a semi-hard wood. It's used a lot for flooring and such. And the grain is pretty cool in this. It's pretty straight, but it's kind of cool because there's so many rings in it. So I'm going to put some sanding sealer on this, get this sanded down, and then I'll come back to you. Okay, so at this point I've got the bowl sanded down to 220 grit. I'm not being too particular with it because I know that the Lichtenberg burning is going to just completely change this whole thing, and it's actually pretty smooth anyway. I've got rid of the tear out. I applied some oil with I think it was around 150 grit up to 220 grit. I'm not going to go any higher than that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clean that with alcohol, which will take all the oil out, and then turn it around and we'll hollow it out, and then we'll basically get it to a sanded finish. And then I'm going to do the Lichtenberg burning on the just this outside area here, possibly the lip as well. Yeah, I think I'm going to do the lip, and then we're going to put the finish on it. I'm going to also have to drill 3 holes, 1, 2, 3, and maybe one in the center for drainage holes, and they're going to be 3/8 holes. Okay, so I've got the bowl turned around, and like I said, I want a relatively wide rim, so maybe there. So I'm going to hollow this out. Now the sides are going to be sloped in, because with the plant that will grow in it and the roots that will form, I don't want them to bind under an undercut like a hollow form, because then you'll have a really hard time to get the tree out to repot it and trim the roots and such. So the sides going in, like I said, will slope inwards so that the plant is easy to come out at any time that you need it to come out. Down a little bit low, there we go. I guess you told me all the same. Everybody feels alone. Everybody's on their own. I wanna see the stars align. I wanna see the burning sky inside your eyes. I wanna go blind. Okay, so this is now sanded down to 220 grit all the way around with oil, and all the tear out is now gone. It's not too thin. I didn't want it to be too thin, although the center is obviously the thinnest part because that's where the mortise is in the underside for the chuck. So okay, so what I'm going to do now is clean this all with alcohol to get as much of the oil out of the wood as I can, so that it's dry, so that it can burn with the Lichtenberg fractal burner. Now I'm going to do a practice piece first, just to see how it reacts with this particular wood, and then I'm going to drill my 4 holes and do my burning around the rim. And I've just basically marked out 4 holes where I'm going to drill a 3/8 hole. Okay, so here we have the Conestoga Works Lichtenberg figure wood burner with the 2 probes in their slots. I'm standing on a rubber mat down here, and the work is on a rubber mat, and the foot pedal is on a rubber mat. The foot pedal turns the probes on. As you can see, the light comes on when I put my foot on the pedal. When I take my foot off the pedal, it turns off. So this is the bowl as it stands. It is a bonsai pot for a bonsai tree, and what I want to do essentially is do Lichtenberg figure around just the rim here. I don't know if I'm going to put it on this part of the rim or not. I'm not sure yet, but probably not. This is the piece that it came from, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a practice piece right here, right now, and see how it looks, because I know that softwoods, it's not as good on softwood as it is hardwood. You want a tight grain wood. Well, this is a relatively tight grain wood, so it might be okay. So first of all, I've got baking soda and water solution, and I'm just going to wet this surface. Okay. So that is now wet. Now I'm going to dry my hands, and I have these Salisbury gloves. They're rated at 18,000 volts. I still need to get my leather gloves to go over top of them, but for now they're okay. You should always test that there are no pinholes in them simply by blowing them up like a balloon. Okay, so I have my assistant to my left, my son, and should anything go wrong, he is going to unplug the device, which is right there. Okay, Connor?
Yep.
Okay. So, okay, here we go. Let me just see that you're in the camera shot. And I think that's a pretty good test. When you apply water to this, it's going to clean it up and it's going to look pretty cool. Almost like tree roots.
Don't let me take too long here. I've got a lot of things to do. These days are passing by me. I'm staring blindly at the view. I woke up one day older, just like 10,000 days before. And all at once I'm hearing a quiet knocking on my door. Lost chances, sideways glances, I will let them be without me. Creation, celebration, I will let them pass me by, and nothing ventured, nothing gained, when all I see is loss and pain, so screw it. Once I was star-eyed shining, now I'm buzzing like a neon sign that's missing half its letters, and it's getting dimmer all the time. Oh, bells ringing, choirs singing, I will let them be without me. Moon shining.
Okay, so I'm out here in the laundry room, and I've got the bowl. This is the Lichtenberg figure that we've got all the way around the rim. I decided against going on the top. the soil's going to be up to here, and then there'll be the rim, and the water can run off the rim if it rains or whatever, if it's outside. And then the Lichtenberg figure, and then the underside I didn't bother touching, and I'll burn my name into that and the date and the wood species and the 3 holes. It's all going to get coated in a waterproof epoxy resin, so that this should be fine outside. So what I have to do now is, with a brass wire brush and water from the sink, I'm going to wash off any of the soot.
I've thrown the day away. Yesterday was once tomorrow, now it's just another fade.
And there it is so far. The Lichtenberg burning around the edge. And then the 3 holes in the underside for drainage. Okay, so I've got this pour on high gloss finish. Basically it's a bar top finish, and you mix this basically 50-50. You've got a resin and a hardener. So I've got a couple of paper cups here, and I've got the resin and the hardener in these 2 containers. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mix it up in one container, and then I'm basically going to paint it on. I'm going to just estimate this 50-50 and then mix it. Now, I've never painted resin on before, so this is going to be interesting. Well, that was a disaster. I put resin around this entire bowl on the outside first, and then the inside, and I was trying not to get too many drips, but I did in fact get drips around the edge when it was upside down. And then when I turned it round, I made the mistake of not putting it on something that would prevent it from sticking to the plywood that I had it sitting on, and it was still a little bit tacky, so it did in fact stick to that. So now I've got little pieces of wood stuck to the underside. And I did forget to put notches in that rim for the water to escape. So that's another thing. Now, I tried different ways of making this dry. I used a heat gun to try and get the bubbles out, and that seemed to work pretty good. And it makes it more viscous when you do that as well, so it runs more. What else? On the inside, there's patches where it didn't even cover the bowl. Now, I know I screwed up because I put oil on the bowl when I was sanding. I think maybe if I had sealed it with sanding sealer, which essentially is shellac with alcohol, that would have sealed that oil in the wood, and then I would have been putting my epoxy resin, I would have been putting my resin on top of that sealed finished piece of wood, and I think it would have been a lot better. So what I'm going to do now is persevere, carry on, and remount this on the lathe and do some sanding to try and eliminate some of these lumps and bumps, and we'll get some more resin. Now when I turn this, it's not running perfectly true, and that's because of the little bit of resin that's in the mortise now is pushing it out of, it doesn't have a perfect seat anymore, so it's pushing it out of round. So when I run it, it's wobbling quite a bit. But I think that's okay. So I've sanded this down to 320 grit. I'm only kind of doing it roughly because this really is just a prototype bonsai pot, and it doesn't have to be a showpiece by any means. But what I'm going to do now is, where the holes are, I'm going to remove the wood because I forgot to do that before. Just a little bit, just enough to allow water to. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give this a really good clean, and then I'm going to reapply some epoxy, very, very thin amount of epoxy, and hopefully this time it will set much better. Okay, so I'm using this pour on resin again, and you have to weigh these out so that each part is equal. So you should wear gloves with this. Okay, so I'm going to be using the resin again. I've got my gloves on for safety, and I'm going to be applying it with a paintbrush, which I don't know if it's the best thing to do or not, but it self-levels itself out. You really want to use a good quality brush, not like the one I'm using today, because if the bristles come out, they end up in your resin and you have to kind of pick them out. But it is what it is. This is what I've got for today. So I'm going to measure this out in grams. Equal amounts in weight, not volume, of this particular one. Okay, so now I'm going to mix these two together, and we'll get them on the top side and inside of the bowl. And thanks for watching. There is a 10" by 2.5" bonsai pot made from Douglas fir, turned on the lathe, and coated in 2 coats of resin. The first coat I had a lot of problems with. The second coat went on pretty good. I'm pretty new to resin, so it's not too bad for a first attempt. I'm pretty happy with it. Whether or not I would get better or not, I hope so. But there it is. I hope you like it. I'll leave some photos at the end. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and please leave a comment below if you have anything to say or ask me. On a personal note, I'd like to mention the Makers Make It Matter campaign, which is ongoing right now. If you head on over to templeboyturnings.com, I'll leave a link in the description below to Steve's website, where you can go on to the auction. There's some amazing items for sale on the auction, all handcrafted items, and the proceeds are going to 2 causes. One, you may all know that my son recently had a double lung transplant, and he is doing amazingly well. He really is. This is the latest picture of him right here. We'll get that up. Okay. And the other 50% of the proceeds are going towards Cystic Fibrosis Canada, in the eventual hope for a cure for this terrible disease. I have 2 sons that has cystic fibrosis, so it affects my family every single day. So anyway, thank you again, Steve, for doing that Makers Make It Matter campaign. Thank you to each one of the people that donated an item, that made an item specially for it. It means the world to me and my family. It really does, and I really appreciate it. So thanks for watching again. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4.